So let's talk some more about the scenarios here in Israel with Shai Franklin. Shai is a Middle East analyst and a partner at Gotham Government Relations. Shai, it looks like we're back to square one again with Netanyahu being given a mandate to form a coalition government like he was before. I mean, what's different this time around?
Well, this time around, it is the second time in a row. So
right.
There's a fatigue, not only among Israeli voters, but I think among the parties as well. And at the end of the day, look, Netanyahu has been prime minister for 10 years. People can measure him based on his track record. Benny Gantz, I think, is running for, he's not a career politician. He wants to be prime minister because he thinks he can serve Israel. And my guess is that he doesn't think he can serve Israel by sending it to a third election. Netanyahu tends to focus on how to stay in power day by day. And if he can stay in power, he continues to be prime minister until there's a new government formed. So he could stay in for months even. I think there is more pressure on Gantz and on his party that's promoting change in Israel to actually do something. If Rivlin, the president, made this proposal that Netanyahu could step aside as prime minister if he's indicted and Gantz would serve as prime minister in the interim, that could be a way for Gantz to step into a coalition government without having to betray his pledge that he wouldn't be in a government with a prime minister under indictment.
But we don't know if that's part of the deal or not, or do we?
We don't know.
Yeah.
What we do know is that Netanyahu has made it this far.
Right.
In all the years and all of the different scandals and challenges and other things. We also know that part of Netanyahu's pitch to be prime minister is that, and to have a government, is that Israel faces tremendous challenges now internationally and domestically. So in that case, there's even more reason why he wouldn't be able to justify going to a third election.
Is there any benefit, do you think, long-term for Gantz to sort of take a back seat in this to Netanyahu? I mean, there was some talk that he was kind of doing it strategically to kind of let Netanyahu fail.
Oh, you mean to give Netanyahu the mandate first? Yeah, you know, it's a little bit maybe Julius Caesar. If you give the first eulogy or the second eulogy, it is not necessarily an inapt analogy. There is some advantage there, and if Netanyahu if Gantz has to make some concessions to join the coalition, he's doing it. He seems more gracious, I think. To be joining in with Netanyahu, especially if he gets to serve first. If Netanyahu is under this cloud of indictment, he steps aside, then even though Netanyahu is getting the first shift as prime minister, technically, in the short term, Gantz will actually be serving as prime minister.
But isn't the real power with these smaller parties that kind of have to fall one way or the other, and or at least fall towards Netanyahu in order for him to really become prime minister again?
Well, some of the small parties would have to fall toward him. Some of the small parties he might have to drop. He has this agreement with the right-wing and religious parties that Gantz and the blue and white have made clear they're not going to go into coalition with the ultra-Orthodox, and neither will Avigdor Lieberman's Yisrael Beitenu party. So at some point, I think Gantz may have to break his pledge a little bit. He may have to bend his pledge not to be in a coalition government with Netanyahu under indictment. And Netanyahu may have to break his promise which was sort of an opportunistic promise of vote sharing and a single block with the more right-wing parties. Maybe Rivlin can step up a little more and raise the fire under that.
What happens, worst case scenario, if we have to go to a third election? I mean, you mentioned the fatigue. I mean, Israelis have to be just over this.
Yeah, you know, we have this in many different countries, including in the United States, where Americans are fed up with the government. They're fed up with Congress, but they still vote for their own member of Congress to be reelected. So Israelis are fed up with the system, but I don't think the votes are going to change much. Israel's not going to become like Italy, hopefully, where there's a new government once or twice a year, but Netanyahu will continue to be prime minister until there is a new government.
All right. Well, clearly we got to keep following this story because it's not ending anytime soon, at least until there's some decision on forming this coalition government. All right. Shai Franklin, thanks.
Pleasure.